Terraces, this one. So I focus on the continuous walled space from from this from the entrance to the public space. So I think the sequence of walled space and the program the arrangement is parallel with the daily routine. This is a cafe and then lounge and going to the public space and then the office space. So which can parallel how we grab a coffee here and then interact with the mates and then going inside for our own working space. And next one, this one is in the Beijing. So the key point here is a continuous circulation, and also the circulation have program in that. And at the joint point here, the circulation joins the volume here. So there is a height change, the double height space here to engage with the wall space, the volume space. And this one for the program, I think it's a green space and terrace. So I think it's not only a green space, but also it can allow the public can plant at least there, and which fulfill the civic role, I think. Next program, I think, is auditoriums. So for this case, it's a auditorium of so the whole space, the whole building is just one single program. It's a program orientated, and also I'm focused on the circulations and surrounds the programs, and there are also the visual connections between different heights. So for the montage, I think for the future, the sequence I followed is also the daily routine. So from the living, working, interacting, and the entertainment. So for first one is living. The keyword is mobility, and I think people still have the aim to traveling by themselves freedomly. So, and also in the future, when there is a enthusiasm of the past stuff, the old stuff. So people have aim to collect the old stuff and combine them for collection.
What do you mean by old? Like heritage?
But I think for the future, people cannot figure out a new idea for the postmodern vision. So they go back and combine to find an identity.
Is this like dealing with some of the ideas we were talking like about last week with the familiar and like identifying certain materialities with history and things?
Yes.
How?
And the working, so the keyword is mood in the working environment. So the new technologies such as the holography can be used to change the visual effects inside the working space to introduce the working mood and atmosphere. And this one, the keyword is equality and dismiss and reframe. What I mean is, so for the working space, each one have the equality, have the same space to use, no matter the what your levels you are, and also the individual work and the group work can be fulfilled using the dismission and reframement of the space itself. Entertainment. So
How do these relate back to some of the questions we were asking in the future workplace? So just looking at the brief and the future workplace and mixed use environment, what does this mean to you and how does it relate to you, your project? Like how are you answering these questions through your diagrams? It looks like they're kind of, I don't understand their relationship, like their ideas about entertainment and things, but how does your project engage with the political environment and the economic conditions surrounding, etc.? Like how is it answering these questions in terms of the future workplace? Like how did you come to these montages?
the montage, the sequence follows the daily routine. So that's why I do the 4 aspects, how we living and working, interacting and entertainment in the future. So right now, I think it's a separate homework for the one. So I don't think I did the relationship on the project.
Okay, so
Yeah, I just do what I want.
Okay, so you need to be you need to be positioning your project in the future and thinking about it in terms of these factors, but you also need to be understanding some of these questions that we're asking you, like what's the building's role within the city and how does it sit, and like kind of not answering those questions and ideas of identity. What is your building's identity or the office building and how it functions? Unless I'm misreading.
No, and how's it a destination? Like you're picking out things and then you're picking out one thing about entertainment or one thing about office. But it's not really suggesting how you're positioning this project in a future context or how you're addressing a proposition or question in relation to what we've asked you to look into. So I think you just need to go back and do that.
And then, so
Do you have the question as well?
I forgot the slide.
You need
What is your building? What is your question? What are you trying to do? You're trying to create a building that what is it? If you just had to describe it.
Actually, I'm not clear about political rules.
No, just generally, if you think about your project, what you know today, what is it that you're trying to create? Like what kind of building?
Like firstly, who's it for?
For the young people. This is
But specifically, like programmatically, we've asked for you to look at an organisation. Like who are those people that will be coming to this building? Who are they working for?
You mean a specific company?
Yeah. Have you done that? See, I think this is a real issue, and it's not just you, it's a few other people that I've noticed this evening. If you're not completing the task that we're setting you, you're not formulating your brief, and you're proceeding with your project, but you're not really understanding what it is that you're trying to do or who you're designing for. And it's really important that you go through and try and get through get through all of these things, so you're able to formulate a strong narrative around what it is that you're designing, and then you're able to respond to that with an application of a device or a procedural experimentation that is starting to suggest, architectural conditions that you're able to then talk about. And at this point of the semester, I am expecting to see outcomes of your devices visually through images and plans and drawings that are beginning to start to suggest what these conditions are. And if these things are not starting to come out at least by next week, it's going to be very difficult to get to a strong outcome by mid-semester that you're able to talk about this project and present it as a building and outcome. So if you haven't done the tasks, and this goes for everyone, you need to go back and complete those. And next week you need to be able to talk about your project and have a question, or at least start to formulate one that has a particular basis or idea that you're trying to solve or experiment with. Okay?
Yeah.
So the program, you need to have that decided, who is going to occupy the building. That needs to be figured out by next week.
I'm just trying to find my notes from last week, because I feel like it was stronger last week, where you were talking about this transparency and creating, we talked about internal facade systems where the building is reflecting a sense of familiar within the building fabric, a sense of different perspectives, so that you can almost portals to viewing different spaces differently from that montage that you did. So you had ideas, but you're not telling me, so I'm not understanding what your project's about. You're losing it.
Yes.
You need to formulate a brief and a question, an ambition. What is a building of the future? What is an office building of the future? And what does the device help you to achieve in terms of conditions within that building? Okay. Keep showing us the device stuff, but you really need to formulate that brief, like Vic was saying.
For the device. So there are three different processes from the cave. The first one is cave formation. It's a micro level. The first step one, water dissolves the carbon dioxide, which can create the carbonic acid. So and then carbonic acid erodes the limestone, and down cutting by the Jackson River lowers the water table, and then the limestone cave will be dry. And after roof collapse, the landscape become pockmarked with sinkholes. And then zoom into this space, it's the stalactites and stalagmites formation. And this diagram shows the micro level, how the bubbles is carbon dioxide, the drop is the water. So firstly, they combine together to get the carbonic acid. So which can erode the limestone, the calcite. And then step 3, the calcite and the carbonic acid, which can become this one. This one can soluble in water, so it can drip with the water going downstairs. And then with and then the calcium carbonic deposit and the carbon dioxide evaporate, so which can create the two forms. And consider about the site. So according to the wind study, there's a strong wind from the north to the south, so which can first steps erode the form like this one, which creates the wall space inside, and also the shapes, the forms. It's a streamline forms called the wind erosion space, and also consider about the visual connection to the site, the terrace connection. So these two spaces would be the terrace on the part one, the lower part. And according to this story, I think the different process occur at the same time. So, for example, the water have different status, such as the dripping water, the flowing water, and also the condensation water. And this one is the program network I lay out in the building. And then, so basically this is relationship between the device and the architectural space. So the cave in this cave is the core programs, the columns, vertical circulations. The columns is this one, it's a limestone. The stalactites and stalagmites drawn together, which can create the columns, and the flow water is a vertical and horizontal circulation. Condensation water, sub programs such as, so this program is the auditorium. So the sub programs maybe the rehearsals on the facade, and the bubble is cantilever structures like this one, and the device stalactites, stalagmites, the enclosed space programs at the bow. So this is this is what I did.
Okay.
So most time spent on the device.
Mm-hmm.
So
Look, since I saw the way you applied it last time, I think you've definitely come a long way in the application. However, going back to what we were saying, you need to define your architectural conditions, understand those, and start to kind of unpack the way that you have begin to do that in terms of the behavioural conditions of the device or the outcomes of the device and how they could be translated into the architectural application. So you started to do that on the next slide where you had the list of, keep going, sorry, next one. So these things here. But I think in terms of the application, you need to delve deeper into each of these. So the column, the vertical circulation, how is that formed? Now, in the application here, you've actually placed a column. So you've got the idea of the intersection, so the column created, and then there's the condition of the stalactites and stalagmites kind of coming into each other, but they're not joined.
yes.
So how do you start to create that sort of condition within the application of your
It's almost understanding how you activate that on multiple levels and doing a three-dimensional activation points to then create, this is my site and this is how many moments and conditions that occur within this site for that say column moment or vertical circulation, And where is it activated based on, okay, these are my primary entries to the building, and at those points of intersect, these points of columns are going to be activated because that's how many points of circulation, vertical circulation, we require in this building. You need that lead on that informs where these things are occurring.
Yeah, I think it's fine the way that you started to set it up in terms of identifying the wind study, and you've started to amass the volume of the project on site. But then preceding that, how can you start to delve into each of those in detail and start to create the cave core programs? What are these core programs? Where do they occur? Does the cave occur at different scales? How can you start to control these separately in the way that they're able to encase, different programs, but also perform in different ways? And whether the column, or Gina touched on the column, but the flow of water, for example, vertical and horizontal circulation, how can you start to create that network of circulation for your project? And how do you begin to bring in the idea, you've got the idea of the river below, and then you have this idea of the dripping kind of water. Does the water start to, you might have circulation pathways that are all connected, but then they start to break away and stop at certain areas, and then they create some sort of interesting condition. So you need to, I think, as I said, break this down and understand how you can begin to apply each of these things in different ways, and then perform your process in a step-by-step way where you're able to then activate that through programmatic decisions or environmental decisions through the site.
So we want you to do that and analyse what you have here and build upon that and understand where everything is activated. But then for this week's task, I want you to look at the erosion component of your device. So it's this thing and furthering it. But for the facade application, I want you to look at applying a facade system that is an erosion-based implementation, where you look at like inhabitable facades, creating those pockets within the facade, utilizing erosion techniques. How does your facade become multi-layered or textured based on erosion? How does it become dinted or extruded or create points of bridges and circulation between these spaces? So you start fleshing out some of the ideas from last week even of having internal facades. So the facade system application should be external but internal as well.
Because you have this kind of courtyard topology where the building comes inside, or it's kind of split.
Yeah.
I don't mind this idea of the daily routine, but you need to understand what that routine is, and is there a set routine, or is it that's kind of structured, or is it a routine that provides for variability or possibilities of moving through that in different ways? If that's something you're interested in looking into. If it's not, then that's okay as well.
Like for next week, we want you to have that question. Is it based around a routine base, or is it something to do with the experiential qualities of the building? Like, what's the ambition? How does the device give you those qualities?